Thanks, Kenny. Well, unfortunately, we're back together today to discuss what I would deem a significant increase in positive tests with the virus amongst our student athletes. We've had 29 positive tests impact our fall sports that we're preparing, that they were preparing for competition, and those positive tests have obviously forced us to pause the workouts, much like we've done with men's basketball and swimming. So now we'll tend to their care, and more specifically to anyone that shows any symptoms that may need additional attention. We've been fortunate that most of the cases have been asymptomatic, but in some cases we've had to deal with fevers and body aches and so forth for a few days. But we'll gauge this as we go. But the four sports that we've paused: men's soccer, women's soccer, field hockey, and volleyball. We paused them on Monday, and now we're going to follow the protocols related to their care and return to competition as appropriate. But we've noted from the very beginning that we have a strong commitment to from our medical and administrative staff in the athletic department that we expect to be met with the same commitment from our student athletes. And unfortunately, we've had a failure in the recent week to do so. And we'll continue to re-educate them on the overall and specific risk related to activities, as much as to wearing a mask and washing their hands. I think I can say our staff remains committed to their care. As you can imagine, it goes without saying that I'm incredibly disappointed and frustrated today with what's occurred. More specifically, after a review of the contact tracing, the primary source of the spread appears to be an off-campus party, which we've seen in other schools, but that was attended by many student athletes. We've talked about other schools. We've used those examples to educate, and unfortunately, we fell into the same trap here. This past weekend. So it was in our routine testing on Monday that we discovered 8 positive tests. But we knew that from the contact tracing from and teammates showing up that there was likely going to be more. And over the course of the last couple of days, those positive tests rose from 8 to 29. So with that said, we held a head coaches meeting last night to discuss what's occurred and their role and assistance in mitigating any issues going forward. Today, in a stronger meeting, I met with the SAC Executive Board, which is comprised of student athlete leaders, and to make them aware and enlist their assistance to communicate the need to follow the protocols and meet expectations of their conduct outside of the oversight of athletic staff. Needless to say, it was an apologetic and somber group, from the student athletes, and they recognize that they have let themselves down as much as the student health and performance team that's working tirelessly around the clock all summer and through today, especially to care for them. I can't tell you, we've invested a great deal of resources financially and in the bandwidth of our talent to produce a successful result. And this shows how fragile things can be if we don't heed to the precautions of the virus and to our medical experts. So with that, I'll go ahead and quickly move to questions.
Vince, to Fred Calgill, WLKY, does this give you pause about football, especially after UConn killed its season today, and obviously after the Pac-12 players threatened to opt out of their seasons because of concerns, at least in part because of health?
Yeah, I think it's given us concerns all along. You can tell it is a fragile situation if you don't follow the protocols. I think with UConn, I think there's different circumstances there, right? I think they had trouble getting the schedule pulled together. So I wouldn't rest it solely on the COVID, except for that's what caused them to probably their trouble pulling the schedule together with their newfound independence and not being in a conference alignment. I think the Pac-12 issues with the We Are United, I think there's some interesting notes in there. I think you can see where the student's voice is in there, but unfortunately, you can also see where there's some third-party agenda in that. I'm sure in the end it'll come out with a positive result, much like many of the movements that are going on related to those either known or unknown to student athletes, which we educate ours on and have since that has gone out, and even in the Big Ten noting some things. They're aware of what's happening in name, image, likeness. we got to educate them on that so they're aware of the pros and cons of that and have their voice. Care, there's been extended health care beyond their graduation. Certainly Louisville, I can speak to postgraduate assistance on completing their degree, or even if they've completed their eligibility and hadn't completed their degree, we have assistance there. Fortunately for us, we've addressed a number of those things, but there'll be more to come. And the thing we can do is communicate, and we ask for their feedback in guiding it. But you can speak to the student athletes on that group, the leadership group, but I think they're pretty comfortable with what we're doing. In terms of their ability to opt out, we'll have a meeting tomorrow with all our student athletes. They'll be able to see what the opt out option looks like and what it means for them. Certainly not going to impact their financial aid, academic services, health services, and those things. And we'll explain that in more detail to them tomorrow. So I'll try not to jump ahead there.
Hey, Vince Cameron from the Courier-Journal. Were you guys able to confirm that? I guess, were there any football players impacted? Obviously, they just started fall camp. And then throughout the contact tracing, how are you guys able to confirm that no other athletes tested positive from this party?
Yeah, well, we've I'll start with the football. No football was found. I believe there's no football to be found in the contact tracing as far as I recall. Which is a good sign. Certainly that could evolve, but I didn't see that. You can see where the focus was here on these 4 sports. And then I'm not saying that there's no contact tracing. I would say this would be perfect, but from the fact that we went from 8 to 29, it was pretty good. We knew who to quarantine, get them in there, get them looked at. I think that the way we've broken this down is. For those that have tested positive, obviously they quickly went into quarantine and have will administer care as needed. For those that were in the contact tracing, we've quarantined them as well. And they'll either be retested today or tomorrow to see if there's positives. And then there was another group that's a part of those sports. For those athletes on those 4, those sports that were on the roster but maybe not involved, or in the first 2 buckets I mentioned, we'll also test them just as the precaution. So the quarantine group that was not positive, and then the other student athletes on the roster that weren't tagged in the contact tracing, we test all those today and tomorrow to make sure we got a good sense of it. With that being said, even if they go through, if they weren't in the contact tracing and they test negative today, tomorrow, they have the ability to come back on Monday. But I just feel like there's no reason to rush them back. Let's just give it another few days to make sure, that if there wasn't something that develops after the test today or tomorrow. So we'll put them back on Monday and they can work out. But for the rest, they'll remain in quarantine according to, CDC and state guidelines.
Vince, Tim Sullivan. Wonder if you are certain as to when the party was, where it was, and how many people were there?
Yeah, I didn't get invited, so I don't know how many were there.
It was 10 people was the limit, but
that obviously was. I think obviously the limit was ignored, because I think by the contact tracing, you can see by the number of positive results, there was obviously more than 10, so they didn't follow those state guidelines at all. The party was Saturday night. And was it an off-campus, housing? But I would say adjacent to campus, without trying to without putting a name to the facility.
Yeah, this is. I'm a reporter with Spectrum News. On that note, I'm wondering if there's any additional instruction to players, student athletes, about avoiding parties, or any additional measures you're taking to try to prevent that?
Well, we've had them from day one. We recite the same things that we've decided from day one, and anything we've learned along the way. There's certainly been some evolution of what a social gathering is, whether it's 10 or 25 or what have you. But this is a part of our routine that we go through, as much as the reminders, the signage, the documents, whatever we're doing, we've had good success since late May until this weekend. And it shows you that when someone has it and they're around a group, how quickly it can move.
It's Tim Sullivan again. Is it realistic to expect college students to sequester themselves on the weekends, just as a practical consideration?
Tim, I could take myself back, and I talk to the student athletes today. I put myself back in their shoes. It's a challenge. It really is. They're young. They want to get out. They're back on campus. As we phase these athletes in, they get excited about being back and seeing everybody. And it takes a real discipline. The things we have to reinforce is if they have that urge, is to still maintain the basics. I mean, it sounds silly. The hand sanitizer, washing your hands for 20 seconds, social distancing, and wearing your mask. There's some fundamentals that haven't changed from the get-go, and that's where we want to make sure that they do that. We certainly would prefer it to be outdoors than indoors if they have the urge and decide to quote unquote step out.
It's Fred Cowgill again. Are you concerned about the optics for people, not just in the sports world, but outside when they see stuff like this about trying to push forward with sports?
Yeah, I think, it's certainly the optics is the reality is that it can spread quickly. And we've known that, but I think, you can see if, once they're outside the oversight, to Tim's question, they're going to have temptations of being a normal kid from 18 to 22. We're really trying to rely on our leadership and the team captains, the seniors, the student, as I mentioned, the SAC executive board to create some leadership for us in conjunction with our head coach's administration. It takes an overall commitment to each other to do that. I don't know what message this will send to them. I know what message I'd like for it to send to them in terms of adhere and follow the commitment and follow what we're trying to educate. But, we'll see how this, plays out. But I'm certain that there'll be other schools that look at what's occurred here and say, wow. And, oh, by the way, we happen to show, the Rutgers example last week to many of our teams and what not to do and how quickly a party can change. And their courage got the best of them.
Vince Cameron again. Obviously, if you show these athletes kind of like examples like Rutgers and LSU was one of the early ones who had an outbreak like this from a party or a club, and you tell them these things, what else do you feel like can be done? Because like you said, you obviously can't bubble college students.
No, I mean, honestly, Cameron, you can't bubble them. I get that. I think if we've given them some advice and guidelines when you're outside of the facilities, when you're outside of our oversight, what to do and what our expectations are, whether you're in Kroger's or pumping gas or whatever it might be, and to avoid large groups, and it may say, it may sound, like it's an unachievable task, but I really think they have to do it. They're going to have time when this thing passes, hopefully, and when we get to that day, to do what they need to do to socialize. But this is a pandemic. You can't emphasize it enough. And as I've said before, when they look at the state numbers and we've only had one death under 30, maybe it gives them a sense of invincibility that they shouldn't have. But we've got a lot of staff that are not in that age group that are working with them. Coaches, particularly the health and performance team that are hand to hand with them on the front line, if you will. That's where it's really, it's kind of heartbreaking today.
Vince, this is Kent, WHAS 11. Was this just limited? I know you mentioned no football. Was this just limited to these four sports, or were there any other sports impacted as well?
No, there were others in contact tracing. That what we're doing, where we saw the numbers and who's active. These were the four that we paused due to the numbers.
Vince, Tim Sullivan again. Are there any consequences if there are repeat offenders here? If there are additional parties and these people who've been already tested positive should do so again?
I think the answer is yes.
What are those consequences?
Well, there's code of conduct issues related to their teams and how their coaches handle them. The athletic department values. There's certainly university code of conduct issues that we are reiterating to them. But if you've got repeat offenders who continue to ignore any team policies, we've always had the option discipline up to dismissal.
Thank you.
Vince, Cameron again. I just wanted to clarify something you said off Kent's question. There were other athletes at this party from other sports who tested positive?
Yes.
Okay, but you guys aren't releasing what other sports those were?
No, not yet. We did have not to these numbers though. I mean, it seems to be focused around these four sports. We obviously kind of spread out fairly evenly with men's soccer, the leader in the clubhouse.
Any further questions for Vince?
Yeah, one more, Vince. This is Cameron again. Those consequences you were kind of alluding to, would those be the same department-wide, or would they be different for each sport, you think?
I think it's
Coach wanted.
Yeah, no, I think that you review the individual student athlete and their experience and what they've had related to the team, whether there's anything that they've run into, suspensions, probations, any other discipline that they've run into, I think plays into this. I would like to believe that this is a kind of a fair warning shot for the remainder. As to that we're taking this very seriously. They should take it more seriously than for those that were involved. I know that they feel bad. I know they probably take some things for granted at that age. I did as well, but they got to understand there are consequences related to this. We've made it. I feel like I've made that clear. I think their head coaches have to varying degrees, but and we'll talk to those coaches about that.
Vince, Tim Sullivan again. Given that these are non-revenue sports, I don't think you have a double standard, but does this give you any desire or feel the need to redouble your efforts in football just because of how fragile things could be?
Tim, I feel confident in our protocols. I feel confident what we're doing and the testing and the measures we're taking and the cleaning and the social distancing that we've put in place. We've been providing some of our information to the ACC and to other organizations because it's been acknowledged that we've done a terrific job with it. Really happy with what we developed and where we were and what was going on. Really until this, and what we're really thinking about is not so much the cleanliness protocols and the process there. It's the process outside of the athletic staff's oversight. Is there something different we should be doing there? And that was what I'm enlisting the support and help from our head coaches on, as well as the rest of the staff, and did the same of our student athletes today, asking them where do you see loopholes in the system? Where should we be better in what we're providing you and doing with COVID? We're happy to do that. If there's resources or other things that you see or hear that we're missing, let us know.
Thanks.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. Vince, thanks for taking the time for this.